It is 8:15 now, Thursday morning, June 10th. Time for a look at senior health with Dr. B, our friend, Dr. Brent Wallis, Chief Medical Officer of People's Health. Hey, Doc, how are you?
Hey, Tommy, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good. Jordan brought us back with some Led Zeppelin there, and I'm just wondering, you a big Zeppelin fan or not?
I do like Zeppelin, actually.
I could imagine you, as a matter of fact, rocking out to some Zeppelin. So it's
I did see them once or twice.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
Many, many years ago.
I wish I had. It's June 10th, 10th day of hurricane season, that time of year again. Last year, we all know, was just crazy active for the Gulf of Mexico and Louisiana. And if you didn't learn to be prepared then maybe you can learn now, because Dr. B from People's Health is going to share his tips for seniors with hurricane preparedness. And Doc, there's a lot that goes into creating a hurricane kit, and People's Health has a guide on its website for people to use. But tell us some of the must-have items, if you will, and about the website.
Sure, Tommy. You know, this is a topic no one really wants to talk about, but this time of year we always, have to start thinking about it again and make sure what we prepared for last year, we're ready for it this year. And like you said, we've got a great guide on our website at peopleshealth.com/hurricane that kind of gives you some tips of things that you should think about and be prepared for. But essentially, the most important things I tell people is put together a folder which has all of your important papers in it. And, obviously that would include your ID and your health insurance card. But in addition to that, having a complete list of all your medications and your medical diagnoses can really help if you're in a situation where, you're out of your normal area and you've got to talk to another physician. Obviously, any medical supplies and all of your prescriptions, but the things about your prescriptions that's important is make sure you have them in their original containers. A lot of people take their pills out and put them in pill boxes, which is really good to remember how to take your pills, but you want to bring those original containers in the event that you need to get any of them filled while you're out of town. And then obviously, flashlights, a radio, batteries, personal hygiene items. But in particular, you also want to make sure any sort of supplies that you need for your medical condition. So diabetics, for example, bringing along their blood glucose meter is very important. This year, even though we're kind of winding down on the pandemic, there's still a lot of COVID around. So, pack a mask, hand sanitizer, and bring your vaccination card. That's actually very important, especially if you end up in a shelter. And if you haven't gotten your vaccine yet, I'm going to make a plug to encourage everybody to get it now, because if you do have to shelter during a storm, you'll likely be with people that have not been vaccinated, unfortunately.
And I guess you want to keep that card with you, because they are going to be separating people, I think, in shelters in terms of who was vaccinated and who wasn't. Yeah,
definitely. And if you something really good you can do is take a picture of the card on your phone so that you've got a picture of it with you at all times.
You mentioned prescriptions. That's a very important thing to note.
Yeah, it's really important. Sometimes during an emergency, we get busy. We're running around trying to figure out where we're going to go. Don't forget to take your medicines as prescribed. We say that during normal times, but it's very important during, any sort of emergency, especially a weather emergency. You want to make sure that you have at least a 2-week supply of any of your maintenance medications, because if you do end up having to leave your area, you want to make sure you have enough and that you don't run out. And keep in mind that you can fill your prescriptions early whenever an emergency is declared. So even though you may have half a bottle left, you can a lot of times go to the pharmacy and actually get a new prescription filled so you've got enough to evacuate with.
And if you've got a chronic condition, I'm guessing you need to prepare a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. Anybody who's got chronic medical problems, you want to think about what your normal routine is when you're not in an emergency and try to maintain that, when you are dealing with an emergency. And that can be really hard, like I said, because, you're running around thinking about a lot of other things. So like I mentioned with diabetes in particular, don't forget your test supplies. And if you take insulin, make sure that you have enough of it and you've got somewhere to keep it. A lot of insulins have to be refrigerated, so you want to make sure you have a little cooler. Another group is that sometimes can have a lot of difficulties during this season is people with end-stage kidney disease, so people that are on dialysis. And so for those people, you want to make sure that you ask your doctor for a packet with all of your orders. You want to kind of look and make sure you have a plan, you know where you're going to go, because if you're getting dialysis and you're suddenly out of your area, you need to make sure you know where you can go to get that dialysis, or you could get really severely ill, if you have to be out of your house for a few days or a week or so. So you can get a list of the dialysis centers that are in the area where you're going to evacuate to and have a place to go.
Obviously a stressful situation, and I guess that can make a chronic condition worse or at least irritated somewhat?
Yeah, stress affects all chronic medical problems, but in particular, stress hormones, which increase when you're experiencing something like an emergency, can cause your blood sugar to rise. And so it's really important to make sure you're still watching your diet, checking your sugar, making sure you're taking all of your medications as well. And, you can feel very emotionally overwhelmed or physically tired, so you've got to remember to kind of stop what you're doing, rest, and take care of yourself. Those stress hormones can also affect blood pressure. So, again, a lot of our patients have high blood pressure and are on medications for it, so make sure that you're still taking your pills, and if you have a blood pressure cuff, make sure you're checking your pressure and it's not running too high.
We take a quick break, pick it up here, we come back. If you're hesitant to put a package together, I would say put it together, because then, by the laws of luck, that means you'll have done it for nothing and nothing will happen. That's the law of superstition, I guess. 8:21. More when we come back. Time for traffic now on WWL. 8:25, Tommy Tucker, WWL, back with Dr. B. Dr. Brent Wallis, Chief Medical Officer of People's Health, and we're talking about senior health as it relates to hurricane preparedness. And what are some other tips, Doc, for people to consider as it relates to evacuation plans, hurricane season preparedness, etc.?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is really just know what your plan is going to be. If you plan to shelter in place and stay in the city, then make sure you've got plenty of supplies, 2 weeks of your medicines, plenty of water and food and everything. But if you are going to evacuate, make sure you know where you're going to go. Don't scramble last minute to do it, because you want to make sure your family and friends know where you're going, and maybe they can assist you as well. If you if you have a condition that affects your speech or language, maybe you've had a stroke in the past, you may want to write down instructions so you can show those to other people, or have a pad and pencil so that you can write something down, for when you get to where you're going. And then, a lot of our seniors have mobility challenges, wheelchairs and walkers and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you've contacted your emergency management office ahead. So if you're going to need help being transported, you've got to have that set up before the emergency actually begins. And the other group, we think a lot about is people who have pets. A lot of our seniors have pets for companionship or service animals. And you want to make sure you've got food for your pet, and that where you're going, that you can actually bring your pet, because, we had a problem with Katrina where a lot of people didn't want to leave their home because there was nowhere they could go with that pet and they didn't want to leave them. So think ahead about some of those things before it happens.
What about some other emergency resources that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's a lot of resources available. Some of the easiest is really just pick up your phone and dial 211, and they can help you with a lot of basic needs and support and tell you what resources are available. On the Internet, there's a ton of information. Weather.gov has up-to-date information, especially if there is a storm coming. And then emergency.louisiana.gov will give all kinds of information about recovery efforts and assistance programs. So you want to make sure that you've got all of those, sites listed so that you can hop on your phone or a computer when you get it, or pick up the phone and call somebody to talk.
Doc, one of the big concerns during a storm or evacuation is if you have a relative in a nursing home, because the evacuation itself can be very dangerous. What would you advise people if they do have a family member in a nursing home as it relates to hurricanes and hurricane preparedness?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tommy. I think if you've got a loved one in a nursing home, you want to make sure that they're taken care of as well. And so I would talk to the nursing home and see what their plans are. The fortunate thing is most nursing homes in our area have created pretty intricate evacuation plans and sheltering plans. And a lot of times these facilities have sister facilities that are outside of the New Orleans area. And so a lot of times they will actually set up the transportation to move their residents to a location that's, out of the danger zone. But you definitely want to talk with them to make sure that there's not an expectation that you need to come pick up your loved one, that it's going to be handled for you. Because if there's not a plan, you want to make sure that you get one in place.
Thanks, Doc. Let's hope we just wasted our time because there's nothing that happens this year, but it doesn't appear to at least not sound what the predictions are saying. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Tommy. Talk to you soon.
You bet. Dr. B from People's Health. You can always go to peopleshealth.com/radio to find out more. You can call 866-687-7335. You can follow People's Health on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and you can download the Odyssey app and use the rewind feature to listen to everything that Dr. B just said about senior health and hurricane preparedness.